Good day, dear students. Herewith, we are going to have the second lecture for the paper Principles of Literary Criticism. In the first lecture, we had an introduction of the paper. I introduced you to the units, the topics to be covered in this paper. In this lecture, let's move into Unit 1. In this Unit 1, we are going to have literary theory, literary history, and literary criticism. Let us start with literary theory. Before understanding what literary theory is, or before going to the definition of literary theory, I want you to have a look at this picture. Here is a panel of multicolored glass. This multicolored glasses reflect or filter the sunlight and ordinary sunlight into multicolored light. So we get a beautiful reflection, a multicolored reflection of light. This is how literary theory is going to work. Each literary theory is like a unique colored glass. If you look through a blue color glass, everything would appear blue. If you look through a red colored glass, everything would appear red. Similarly, literary theory is an idea or a concept through which you look at a text. A text has all these angles in it. That's why a text like this beautiful colorful reflection appears to be impressive, influential, and a great work of art. So, literary theory provides an additional lens or conceptual framework for you to decode and interpret a text differently. Literary theory is a lens through which you look at the text, through which you try to understand a new meaning of the text. This literary theory is provided by the social system or the new ideologies or the new philosophies which upholds in the society. For example, during the later half of 16th century, that is 16th or 17th century, which was a period of Puritans. An important work written during the period of Puritans was Paradise Lost. Of course, Lost was written after the fall of um, Oliver Cromwell. Paradise Lost was published in the year 1666, right? So with 1660, we have Restoration. So when this Paradise Lost was published, Milton, being a Puritan, sees women as the snares of Satan, as a trap made by Satan to make man do sins. அதாவது பெண்களை ஒரு சேட்டனுடைய ஸ்னேர்ஸ், அதாவது பொறிகளா பார்த்தாங்க. பெண்களை ஒரு ஹியூமன் பீயிங்ஸா பார்க்கல, ரைட்? ஆனா இன்னைக்கு when we talk about feminism, we do not accept this theory, right? Satan calls women as the snares of Satan in his Paradise Lost. It's a dominant theory prevailing during the Puritan age, right? So there was no a place for women in the society, right? Now we condemn it in terms of feministic theory. அப்போ feminism அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு literary theory through which you look at a text. What do you look at a text? From the point of feminism, you look at the female characters in a work. You study the female characters. You study how the male characters dominate women characters. What is the status of woman character in the society? Or how does a male author create a female character? Right? Or how does the female readers apprehend the female characters? Right? So that's what a literary theory. So literary theory is an additional lens through which we try to understand a text. For example, eco-criticism is a theory. You can as well see Paradise Lost in an eco-critical perspective. When you wear the eco-critical theory, a glass called eco-critical theory, you look for the concepts of nature, the terms of nature, the treatment of nature. When you put on the glass of feminism, you look for the treatment of women characters. When you put on the glass of Marxist theory, you look for the treatment of the lower class, the working class, and the upper class. Right? So that's what a literary theory is. So literary theory is an additional lens or a focal point or an angle of looking at the text and understanding a new meaning or decoding a new meaning. Much of literary theory draws on different philosophical, political, psychological, and social ways to interpret the world and our thoughts. Yeah, that's what I was telling. Literary theory emerges from the political concepts, the philosophical concepts, the psychological concepts, and the social ways. Social ways. For example, nowadays we don't talk about or think about male domination as was done during the during the Puritan age, right? During the period of Shakespeare, women were not allowed to appear on stage, but now it's not the condition of women. So, a social setup, the social way of the treatment of any person or looking at a thing, that's what leads to the emergence of literary theories, political and psychological as well as philosophical. Literary theory is a body of ideas. This is going to be a very perfect definition. Literary theory is a body of ideas, what we believe. And what we believe is how we look at things. If I believe that women should not be allowed to go for a work, she should not be given an education, somewhat like that, I would not appreciate a work of art in terms of this feministic theory. Right? Because feminism talks about the equality of women, the equal treatment, the liberation of women, the chauvinistic theories, right? Against these chauvinistic theories. So literary theory is a body of ideas and methods we use in the practical reading of literature. You apply your belief, you apply uh, what what you think or what you believe to be right. And how do you come to believe? You come to believe because the society has put that seed in you, right? That seed evolves a kind of outlook in you, and that outlook is what we call as literary theory. So literary theory develops in terms of the significance of race, in terms of significance of class and gender for literary study. This literary theories can be any dimensional. It can be in the dimension of race. You can look at a work of art or a piece of literature in terms of racial discrimination. We talk about the concept of identity. We talk about in terms of the other. When we talk of Oriental philosophies, we talk of the other. So this literary theory can be in terms of race, in terms of class, in terms of gender, for that matter. It could be anything for that matter. So literary theory is nothing but principles, concepts, or ideas or rules derived from internal analysis of a literary text or from knowledge external to the text. External to the text. You don't get the idea of the liberation of women or the equality of women from the text. You get it externally, you get it from the society. It's an external knowledge. So, literary theory is an external knowledge which you apply to analyze a text, which you apply for the internal understanding of a text. So, literary theory is an external knowledge which you apply for the analysis of the internal quality of a text. Right? Principles derived from internal analysis of literary text or from knowledge external to the text that can be applied in multiple interpretative situations. The knowledge you get either externally or internally, you apply it on a text and understand that work of art. உங்களுடைய அந்த நம்பிக்கை பெண்கள் எப்படி நடத்தப்பட வேண்டும் அல்லது வாட்ஸ் த ரோல் ஆஃப் நேச்சர் இன் டர்ம்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஈகோ கிரிட்டிசிசம் அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு கான்செப்டை நீங்க லிட்ரேச்சர்ல இருந்து பெற்றிருக்கலாம் அல்லது வெளி நாலேஜ்ல இருந்து. ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் லிட்ரேச்சர்ல இருந்து மட்டும்தான் நீங்க வந்து என்விரான்மெண்ட்டை பத்தி ஈகோவை பத்தி ஒரு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் வரணும் அப்படின்னு இல்லை. We could get that knowledge from the external sources also. So when you get that knowledge from the external source, you apply it to understand a work of art. வேர்ட்ஸ்வர்த் எழுதும்போது ஈகோ கிரிட்டிக்கல் தியரியை வச்சு நம்மள ஸ்டடி பண்ணுவாங்கன்னு நினைச்சு பார்க்கல. Now we study Wordsworth and Coleridge in terms of eco criticism. Psychology, Coleridge psychological theory அல்லது psychoanalytical theory வச்சு நான் ஸ்டடி பண்ணுவாங்கன்னு நினைக்கல. Now we apply that psychoanalytical study to understand or interpret the meaning, different shades or layers of meaning of Coleridge's poetry. Now we have post-colonial theory. Post-colonial theory வச்சு ஷேக்ஸ்பியர் அவருடைய டெம்பெஸ்ட்டை யாரும் ஸ்டடி பண்ணுவாங்கன்னு நினைக்கல. Now we apply that post-colonial theories to decode the meanings of the tempest. So the external knowledge is applied to get the internal knowledge or internal analysis of a literary text. Literary theory is the application of diverse knowledge. Diverse, a variety. Application of a variety of knowledge. எல்லா ஃபீல்ட்ல இருக்கிற knowledge. For example, ecology, women studies, sociology, economics, right? Environment, எந்த ஃபீல்ட்ல வேணாலும் இருக்கலாம், right? Any field. For example, now we have geography in terms of literature. Now we have spatial approach to literature, which involves geography in its study. Right. So a diverse knowledge, a variety of knowledge and perspectives in order to yield is to get, in order to get the multiple meanings, the multiple interpretations of literature. So this is what is literary theory. So literary theory helps you to understand a question. How do I evaluate a text? How should I evaluate a text? So it helps you to understand the question or get an answer for the question, how should I evaluate a text? What should I look for? You can apply any of the theories for the extraction of the meanings. You could squeeze out a text with different shades or layers of meaning. Every text has its own focal point. So there are a variety of glasses. By the word glass, I mean the theories. So each theory is like a colored glass. Every color would reflect or help you see the color, the same color in the text. If you look at a text from a feminist perspective, you will get a different shade of meaning. For example, Gayatri Spivak. Spivak's one of the important essays where she talks about uh, Jane Eyre's, Jane Eyre, Bronte's Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre was considered as one of the important feministic works, as well as it was the book where she talks about a mad woman in an attic. The theory of mad woman in an attic was brought by the Gayatri Spivak through that work, right? In that work, she questions Jane Eyre itself. Jane Eyre, who herself was responsible or becomes a character or a weapon through which that mad woman Martha is being attacked or deprived of her rights in that novel. Here she points out that a woman herself becomes the enemy of another woman. So the work which was once considered as highly feministic or a thought a work which was talking about the liberation of women or the rights of women or a modern woman itself has its own deficiency in its own terms, right? So every work has its own angle, has its own dominant theme or a dominant concept. That's what we try to study through the theories. So there are a variety of theories or a variety of glasses through which we could see a text. Even Wordsworth, who is considered as one of the important nature poet, can be seen in terms of not only eco-criticism but also in terms of psychological terms. We could study Wordsworth in terms of psychoanalytical theory. We could study a poet who is a highly displaying his imaginary world, who is known for his supernatural elements, like Coleridge, could be studied in terms of eco-criticism. We could go for the imaginary presentation of the environment that he presents in his poems. For example, the ecology in A Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, the ecology in for example, Kubla Khan, right? So there are a variety of glasses through which we look at any work of art. So theories help us to understand or see a text. Theories are like this multicolored glasses. If you wear a blue color glass, you would look at anything would appear blue. If you wear a green color glass, you could see everything green. So this is how we can understand this literary theory in a better way. So each glass or each theory would give or unfold a new meaning of the text. ஒரு தியரியும் ஒரு லேயர் ஆஃப் மீனிங்க ஒரு டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஷேட் ஆஃப் மீனிங்க அந்த டெக்ஸ்டுக்கு கொடுக்கும். அதுதான் தியரி. மேலோட்டமா பார்க்கும்போது ஒரு சாதாரண மீனிங் ஆகும். when you apply this theory ஒரு theoretical approach பண்ணும்போது you will get or the text unfolds new meanings, and these glasses and angles would be changing. Once ஒரு theory வந்துருச்சு அப்படின்னா we cannot say that it will be stable. I was talking about the concept of looking at women during 17th century. Women was looked at as a snare of Satan, but now it's not the condition. Now we have changed, right? ஒரு காலத்துல பாத்தீங்கன்னா divine right theory இருந்தது. Now we have democracy. So looking at things would change, so the theories would be changing. இன்னைக்கு we have post-colonial theory. Post-colonialism was unknown during the period of Shakespeare. Now we have that theory and we study Shakespeare in terms of post-colonialism. We see at Prospero as a colonizer, as we had the British in India, and we see Caliban is equal to Indians who were colonized, who were squeezed out, who were enslaved by the imperial government of Britain, like Prospero. So these theories would be changing and changing according to time. So what the work once meant will not mean the same in future. ஒரு காலத்துல என்ன மீனிங் இருந்ததோ அதே மீனிங் தான் ஃபியூச்சர்ல ஒரு தியரி அப்ளை பண்ணும்போது இருக்கும்னு சொல்ல முடியாது. Theories would give new meanings. What was once considered as great may be now considered as inferior, or it might be deprived of its speciality. So theories would change according to time, and these theories would give different angles, would provide different focal points to look at things. This may change. Once what was considered as great may not be considered as great in future. That's what here we mean by literary theory. Theories evolve and change as the time moves on. That's what I was telling. Theories would be changing, always changing, ever changing. Ever changing in the sense, what was once considered as great? For example, the publication of um, Darwin's theory just toppled the beliefs of people, toppled the beliefs. Right? People were talking about heaven and earth, God, angels, and creation, sin and values of moral values. But the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species toppled everything, toppled all the beliefs of the people. So the evolving theories would change our outlook. During Chaucer's period, the religious people were given much respect, though they were exploiting the people, though they were very corrupt. They had equal status to that of the royal people. We had ecclesiastical court and secular court. This ecclesiastical court or the people had more authority than that of the king. But when you come to the period of T.S. Eliot, we could see the same thing. We could see when the church bell tolls, a man corrects his watch. He just puts his watch in its right time. He doesn't have any religious value when he hears the church bell. But it was not so in terms of, in the time of Chaucer. So the theories evolve according to our beliefs, according to the change of our outlook. It changes according to time. Right? What was once chaotic becomes meaningful. Chaotic is um, illogical, meaningless. What was once chaotic becomes meaningful. And a gospel, chaotic அர்த்தமற்றதாக இருந்தது, gospel மாதிரி, பைபிள் மாதிரி, highly meaningful என்ன ஆயிடும், பார்க்கப்படும். What was once chaotic becomes meaningful and gospel. And gospel would turn absurd in a matter of time. Just imagine, what if Harold Pinter and Beckett would have lived during the period of Shakespeare? Harold Pinter and Beckett might not have gained any identity or were not considered as dramatists if they would have lived during the period of Shakespeare. Right? That's what here we mean. What was once chaotic becomes meaningful and gospel would turn absurd in a matter of time. So these theories evolve and change. They would always be changing. Now let's move to this timeline of literary theories. I said this literary theory evolves or changes according to time. The study of the change of literary theories, the evolution of literary theories, the emergence of one literary theory and a fall of one literary theory is what we are going to study in literary history. So this literary history is the study of the growth of, the development of, the evolution of literature along with the evolution of literary theories. In the literary theories ஓட சேர்ந்து லிட்ரேச்சரும் வளரும். ஹிஸ்டரி ஆஃப் இங்கிலீஷ் லிட்ரேச்சர்ல என்ன படிக்கிறோமோ அந்த அதோட சேர்த்து இந்த தியரியோட எவல்யூஷனையும் படிக்கிறோம். ரைட்? ஷேக்ஸ்பியரோட பீரியட்ல what were the theories? How was a work looked at? ஷேக்ஸ்பியரோட பீரியட்ல the work was evaluated on the basis of the moral values it held in itself. அந்த workல எந்த அளவுக்கு morals இருக்கு? What does a work teach? What does a work has to say to the audience or the reader? அதை பேஸ் பண்ணி தான் ஒரு work என்ன பண்ணாங்க? evaluate பண்ணாங்க. Moralistic approach. அந்த workல எவ்வளவு moral இருக்கு? Moral இருக்கா இல்லையா? Right? So the beginning was with the moralistic approach. Later பார்த்தோம்னா formalistic approach. Formalistic approach is அந்த ஒரு workல form இருக்கா இல்லையா? இப்போ ஒரு epic அப்படின்னா epic உடைய எல்லா genre epic genre உடைய எல்லா featuresம் இருக்கா இல்லையான்னு ஸ்டடி பண்ணுவாங்க. Right? அப்போ each time zone or each age has its own dominant theory with which they evaluated a work of art. For example, when Milton published his Paradise Lost, he was not read. Right? 7 publishers rejected his Paradise Lost to publish. He was not able to publish. Right? But somehow he found a publisher and he published it. Right? But he was not read. The copies of first publication were not sold out. அவர் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பப்ளிஷ் பண்ண காப்பீஸ் எல்லாமே வித்து தீரவே இல்லை, விற்கவே இல்லை. 6 or 7 காப்பீஸ் தான் வித்தது. But when Addison and Steele in their periodical published a review of Milton's Paradise Lost, people started focusing their attention towards Milton and his Paradise Lost. அடிசனும் ஸ்டீலோட ரிவ்யூ தான் மில்டனுக்கு ஒரு உயிரை கொடுத்தது. இன்னைக்கு மில்டனை யாராலையும் மறக்க முடியாது. பிளேக் சேஸ் If each and every copy of Paradise Lost been burnt in this world, I could reproduce it with my memory. இந்த உலகத்துல இருக்க Paradise Lost copy எல்லாமே எரிஞ்சு சாம்பல் ஆயிடுச்சுன்னா கூட I could I could reproduce it with my memory. அப்போ அந்த அளவுக்கு Paradise Lostக்கு ஒரு ஸ்டேஜ் நம்ம இன்னைக்கு இங்கிலீஷ் லிட்ரேச்சர்ல கொடுத்து வச்சிருக்கோம், which was once rejected by the publishers. Yeah, being a puritanic work, it was rejected. But when it was appreciated, when it was looked at from a different angle, from its moralistic value, from its what to say, formalistic approach, when it was estimated by Addison and Steele, it started gaining its value. So these literary theories would change according to the age. So through the ages of literary history, we also trace the evolution of, or we also trace the development of the history of literary theories. So literary theories, literary history, and literary criticism are inseparable. They are interlinked with each other. They are interconnected. They cannot be separately read. If you are studying literary history, you are also studying literary theory. If you are studying literary history, you are also studying literary criticism. Okay, so once again, literary theory is a body of ideas or principles which you apply on a work of art in order to understand its meaning. Okay, literary history is the study of the timeline of literature. This timeline of literature is also the timeline of literary theory. Similarly, literary criticism. Literary criticism is an evaluation or an estimation of a work of art by applying these literary theories. Okay, so to put in simple words, literary theory is theory, literary criticism is practical. இது theory paper மாதிரி, இது practicals மாதிரி. Literary criticism is practical. You take up a work, you study it in terms of a theory, you apply a theory and study that work, and you come out with the pros and cons, you come out with the merits and demerits of a work, and you pass a judgment whether it is good or bad in terms of this or any other literary theory. அப்போ literary theoryங்கிறது ஒரு theory paper, அது theory சொல்லும், concept ideas body of ideologies சொல்லும், and literary criticism அப்படிங்கிறது ஒரு practical approach, அந்த தியரியை apply பண்ணி ஒரு work-அ evaluate பண்றது, estimate பண்றது. That's what we call as literary criticism. So I hope you all would have understood what literary theory actually means. Please go through this lecture twice or thrice. If you have any doubts regarding this lecture, you can post your doubts and comments in the comment box in our channel, or you can post it on my WhatsApp. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. In the next class, we shall move to what is literary history and what is literary criticism. Thank you.